I did it in summer, I did it in autumn/fall, and now it is finally time to talk about 6 horror movies that I'm going to be prioritising watching right here on my channel across winter. We're talking December, January and February, because it is finally time to start watching those movies set in blizzards, set in the snow, set all across the cold months, because let's be honest, nobody wants to watch a movie that's about a blizzard when you are sat at home in a heat wave in the middle of summer. If you're new here, I go by Hordes, and if you're not new, welcome back. I talk about horror movies here on my channel on Mondays and Fridays, and if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, maybe hit that subscribe button and join the Horde. But without further ado, here are 6 movies that you can expect to see at some point across my channel in December, January and February, aka winter. Attack of the Lederhosen Zombies from 2016 is a zombie horror comedy. Steve, a young professional snowboarder, ruins a high-paying photo shoot with a silly prank, causing himself, his girlfriend, and a fellow snowboarder Josh to be left behind on the mountain. They seek shelter in a garish, loud après-ski tavern that is hosting an all-night party for the last night of the season. Things go from bad to worse when a scientific experiment conducted by a local entrepreneur unleashes an epidemic of zombies and mutant wildlife on the Austrian Alps. You can thank the Undead Symphony podcast for this one, for bringing it to my attention, because back when I was on their podcast back in February, after we'd finished filming the episode, we were having a little bit of a chat, and the name of this movie got thrown out, and you are hardly going to forget a movie called Attack of the Lederhosen Zombies. And yes, it really is about zombies on a ski resort. And as the movie title suggests, of course, there are zombies in lederhosen, as well as every single flavour of ski gear that you can possibly imagine. Would it be a Hordes of Horror list if I didn't include a horror comedy or a zombie movie somewhere? No. So for this case, you are absolutely getting a 2 for 1, and I guarantee that this is probably going to be the first one that I prioritise watching on this list, because it just sounds like a whole level of insanity that I can absolutely get behind. Zombies on a ski resort.
If you ski out of your league, you're gonna have a bad time.
You can expect zombies in lederhosen, ski wear, snowmobiles, and a chainsaw to tear all of them to pieces with. Last Winter from 2006 is a psychological horror thriller. Sent to evaluate the environmental impact of an oil drilling in the Arctic, James Hoffman clashes with the drill crew's chief, who wants to get the job done. After one team member is found dead and naked in the snow, strange events begin to plague the crew, and they are soon cut off from the outside world. Hoffman and the crew feel the full force of Mother Nature's wrath, and there is no visible escape. This is the first of 2 movies on this list that are set in isolated settings in the Arctic, but this one happens to have Ron Perlman in it, which is another selling point for me. There is something about an isolated location movie that everyone can just relate to. At some point in your life, you have been stuck in a situation with people that you do not want to be stuck in that situation with, and there is no way for you to get out of it. If you've worked retail, simply being on shift with people you don't like absolutely counts for this. Now imagine that scenario and put yourself in the middle of nowhere, and tensions are going to rise and people are going to get fiery, because I don't know about everybody else, when I get cold, I get miserable. I'm interested to see how the environmental element is going to play into this as well, because this was back in 2006. And the world is now in a far worse place. Like, we're talking every summer the earth is on fire thanks to global warming kind of like levels. But the drilling plot in this reminds me of the movie Hellhole, which came out this year. So I'm interested to see how this movie has aged in comparison to a brand new movie that's dealing with a similar kind of topic, but without the comedy part.
Stop laughing!
You can expect trouble in the Arctic, an isolated location, human popsicles, and all sanity to be questioned. Werewolves Within from 2021 is a werewolf horror comedy. A proposed pipeline has created divisions within the small town of Beaverfield, When a snowstorm traps its residents together inside the local inn, newly arrived forest ranger Finn and postal worker Cecily must try to keep the peace and uncover the truth behind the mysterious creature that has begun to terrorize the community. But as the bodies pile up, the blame begins to shift from person to person, and this trigger-happy community will do anything to ensure that they are the last ones standing. I have never played Werewolves Within, but I am very familiar with the game that this is based on. It is the game Mafia, which is a social deconstruction game often played at parties where there is a lot of pointing fingers, and I guarantee that you have either played or seen something that is based on Mafia. Just to name a few, The Town of Salem, which is a PC game, the Werewolf Games, which is a set of Japanese movies, or more recently, The Traitors. I know a werewolf movie is always going to be a good choice right here within the Horde. You always get so happy when I include a werewolf movie. So when I am able to include one, I am always going to do so. And this one spoke to me for a different reason, because while this is a werewolf movie, it is also a whodunit movie. And it's one of those movies where I can't really go into more details than the plot that I mentioned in the intro for this entry, because I want to play along and find out the whodidit in the whodunit.
Search for clues. Search for clues.
You can expect a werewolf whodunit murder mystery, an entire town prepared to point fingers to save their own skin, and every single person trapped in a lodge during a blizzard. The Thing from 1982 is a sci-fi horror. Members of an American scientific research outpost in the Antarctic find themselves battling a parasitic alien organism. Things take a sinister turn when they realise the creature can take the shape of its victims. They soon discover that this task will be harder than they thought, as they don't know which members of the team have already been assimilated, and their paranoia threatens to tear them apart. Like when I added Candyman to my list of movies that I was going to watch in autumn/fall, I just heard so many of you gasp at this one, being like, Hordes, how have you never seen The Thing? And to quote what I said about Candyman, the reason is simple, and that is the hype around this movie absolutely terrifies me. Like, I understand that this movie has had hype for 40 years, and there's probably a really good reason for this, but I just find that the more hype a movie has behind it, the more intimidating it is to actually sit down and watch it, because what if you don't feel the same way about it as everybody else? Like, do you want to be the minority that says that you don't like this movie? No, you don't. Now, I have seen images of The Thing, and just like Candyman, I have managed to avoid spoilers for this movie, and I have no idea how. Like, I really don't know how I've avoided movie spoilers for this movie of all things. Like, all I can tell you is there is something to do with a mutant dog, because that is in quite a few of the synopsises. I have seen the head spider picture, and I have seen when the guy's chest bursts open, but that is all I know about The Thing, and it is widely considered to have some of the greatest practical effects, not just of an 80s horror movie, but like of all time. And if you know me, you know that your girl really likes a practical effects movie. So that is the reason why I'm watching The Thing. I need to know, like, how good are these practical effects if they are considered to be some of the best of all time. I'm ready. You can expect what are widely considered some of the greatest practical effects of all time, a shape-shifting entity, and to never want to set foot in an isolated research base in the middle of the Arctic. Ravenous from 1999 is a Wild West cannibal horror. The Sierra Nevada mountains, 1847. A bedraggled stranger stumbles into Fort Spencer, claiming to be a settler who has been trapped in the mountain caves by a snowstorm. He reports that his fellow cave dwellers have been reduced to cannibalism and that he is lucky to escape with his life. Captain John Boyd and his military colleagues must accompany them back to the cave, where they discover a far more grisly version of these events. I've made it known a few times here on my channel that I am quite the fan of a cannibal movie, which is hilarious when you know that I am a vegan. But this movie has literally been on my backlist for years at this point. But when you are dealing with a movie where the snow is up to your knees, I am not watching that in the middle of summer in a heatwave. It is not happening. Like, I want a blanket so I can feel warm while watching the lovely pretty snow. And in this case, the maybe not so lovely pretty cannibals that are in it. Ravenous also takes another one of my buzzwords, and that is ye old wildy west horror, because at this point we've all seen Bone Tomahawk and I'm looking for other things. Thine Ears Shall Bleed was not a good example, and if you were here for that review you'll know that I had some strong thoughts and opinions on that one. But I love the ye old wildy west, particularly when it comes to badass ladies of ye old wildy west. And if you don't know who Bellstar and Pearl Heart are, go and look at them, because they were causing all kinds of mayhem back in ye old wildy west. We're not here for taking Native American land from people. We're not here for that part of history. I just want people being like rebelling against the military and doing their own things and bootlegging, and like, I want that side of ye old wildy west. I just prefer my ye old wildy west to be a bit dark and grittier, and how much dark and grittier can you get than cannibals in a mountain using enormous bear traps to catch people?
We're not trapping bears, we're trapping people.
You can expect massive bear traps that are being used to catch wandering people in the snow, a game of cat and mouse, and a story inspired by the real-life events that happened to Alfred Packer, aka the Colorado Cannibal. Abominable from 2006 is a creature feature horror. After recovering from a horrific accident, paraplegic Preston Rogers moves back to the remote cabin where he and now deceased wife once lived. When his new neighbour Karen is attacked by a gigantic creature, Roger contacts the local authorities. But after the police and those around him dismiss Roger as a delusional widower, he sets out to stop the abominable creature himself. 2 words. Jeffrey Combs.
Bang! Fade out. Roll credits.
I'm going to say a little bit more besides those 2 words, but I know that those 2 words, at least within my community here on YouTube, carry a lot of weight, and some of us will absolutely watch a movie just because a certain actor is in it. And while Jeffrey Combs is not the main character in this, he is still in this movie, and at some point I am now going to need a movie where Jeffrey Combs fights a Sasquatch. Like that it just writes itself. But yes, this is a cryptids movie, and I love a cryptids movie because there is so much that you can do with these stories, because there are those that have had hundreds of sightings and those that have only been seen once or twice. So there is never going to be you're never going to run out of stuff that you can turn into a movie when it comes to cryptids. My personal favourite, if you've never heard of them, is the Fresno Nightcrawlers, who look like giant white pants. They're amazing and I love them so much just because of how ridiculous they are. Do I think that Sasquatch exists now? No, but do I think that there is a possibility that at some point something that resembled the Sasquatch actually exists? Probably, but humans do have this habit of hunting things out of existence, so at this point I don't think we're ever going to know. But if they did exist, would they be angry and really pissed off that, you know, humans keep trying to hunt them out of existence? Yes, they would. Hence why, Angry Sasquatch movie, which makes me even happier.
Those things are basically feral.
You can expect a Sasquatch attack done with actual practical effects Sasquatch, which makes me so happy, a group of college girls in need of saving, and a man in a wheelchair who needs to confront some past trauma. So there you have it, the 6 horror movies that I'm going to be prioritising watching right here on my channel over winter. 2 in December, 2 in January, and 2 in February. If you have seen any of these movies, I would love to know what your thoughts and opinions are on them down in the comment section down below. And if any of these took you by surprise, like The Thing, let me know as well, because I think at this point I am one of the few people left who hasn't seen The Thing. If you would like to know where else you can find me, I am also over on Instagram and Letterboxd at Hordes of Horror, where I've watched over 180 horror movies at this point just this year, so there is plenty that I haven't spoken about right here on YouTube. But speaking of YouTube, I will of course be back on Monday with a solo movie review, and it is going to be one of the movies on this list, and if you haven't already guessed it, we're watching Zombies in Lederhosen. It has to happen. So until next time, bye.